Imagine risking your life on military deployments overseas, only to discover that your wife isn't just cheating. She's collaborating with a foreign spy network, using your own children to extract classified secrets. This isn't just a cheating wife story. This is the story of how I uncovered an international espionage ring and saved my family from total destruction. My name is Ethan Walker, and this is my true story. My name is Ethan Walker. For over a decade, I served my country as a military intelligence officer specializing in counterterrorism. While others saw spreadsheets, blurry surveillance images, or disjointed data streams, I saw patterns. I was good at finding hidden connections, both on the battlefield and off. Unfortunately, I never imagined I would one day have to turn those skills onto my own life. My wife, Melissa, had always been strong while I was away. We married right after college, and together, we raised two beautiful kids, our son, Caleb, who was 13, and our daughter, Emma, who was 10. Deployments were brutal on any family, but Melissa always reassured me she could handle it. She was independent, patient, and supportive, or at least that's what I thought. But over the past year, things had shifted. I was currently stationed overseas on a special assignment with limited communication access. Every evening, I would try to FaceTime home whenever possible. But lately, Melissa's reasons for cutting calls short grew stranger by the week. "Bad signal here tonight, Ethan," she would say while sitting inside our perfectly stable Virginia home with full broadband internet. "Taking the kids to my mom's tonight. Poor reception there," she texted once, though her mother lived downtown where reception was flawless. And then there was the smell. 6 months ago, during my last brief visit home, I noticed a bottle of men's cologne in our shared bathroom, a scent I'd never worn in my life. Melissa brushed it off with a light chuckle, saying she got it free at the mall while shopping for our son's birthday. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But after years in military intelligence, you stop ignoring patterns. The restaurant receipts were next. Fancy places I never heard of, some nearly an hour away. The names of the friends she claimed to be dining with? People I'd never met, never heard of, and couldn't verify. When I asked gently, her tone turned defensive. "Ethan, you're being paranoid," she said sharply. "You've spent too long chasing terrorists. Now you're seeing ghosts in your own home." Maybe she was right. I had spent years tracking threats most people couldn't even imagine. But something in my gut kept whispering, "This isn't nothing. This is real." The final blow came unexpectedly while I was out on mission. I had secretly installed a home security system before my last deployment, a precaution most military dads wouldn't admit out loud, but one that gave me peace of mind. Cameras in common areas only. Melissa didn't know. She would have called me overprotective. Late one night, after finishing a successful raid operation, I finally had a moment alone and checked the footage remotely. There they were. On my living room couch sat Melissa, and a man I'd never seen before. A tall, well-dressed man with perfect posture, expensive loafers, and a smug grin. They were sipping wine from the crystal glasses we'd received as a wedding gift. My wedding gift. The man leaned in and kissed her. My wife. Then they disappeared into my bedroom. I didn't turn away. My training wouldn't let me. I watched long enough to document, to gather what I needed. Emotionally, I shut down. My brain went into tactical mode. This wasn't just infidelity, it was something more dangerous. I knew it instinctively. Later that night, as my fellow soldiers celebrated the success of our operation, I sat alone in my tent, cold, hollow, yet hyper-focused. This was now the most important mission of my life. If they thought I was the prey, they were dead wrong. I was the hunter now. For days I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Melissa's face, twisted in a smile I didn't recognize anymore. And that man, that stranger, whose presence had invaded not just my house, but my family, my life. I played the security footage repeatedly, not to torture myself, but to analyze. Every detail could matter. The wine they drank, the movements they made, even the way Melissa glanced toward the camera she didn't know existed. My military instincts had fully taken over. I wasn't the betrayed husband anymore. I was an intelligence operative on a domestic operation. I needed intel. I started with the basic digital forensics. While stationed at my overseas post, I remotely accessed our home network, something I had secretly secured with military-grade encryption before deploying. Every device connected to the Wi-Fi left footprints, every search history, every text message backup, every cloud account, all waiting to be uncovered. Within hours, I found messages between Melissa and her new lover. The name he used was Ryan Mitchell, seemingly harmless. His texts were sickeningly sweet, filled with empty promises about our future together, raising the kids like his own, and how soon everything will belong to us. I kept digging. Credit card statements revealed hotel bookings under Ryan's name, including 2 trips taken during weekends when I was supposed to be on high-risk missions overseas. Restaurant reservations, luxury spa visits, and expensive jewelry purchases, all lined up perfectly with Melissa's fabricated girls, nights, and work conferences. Then came the financial irregularities. Just 2 months ago, Melissa had opened a new private bank account. A joint account used by married couples is one thing, but secret solo accounts? That was another story. Large deposits, always just under the federal reporting threshold, kept appearing. At first, I thought Ryan might just be another opportunist using my wife for money or comfort while I was away. I was wrong. Very wrong. As I continued to run identity checks through my contacts in the military intelligence network, cracks started forming in Ryan Mitchell's story. No valid birth records, no college enrollment history. Employment records at the pharmaceutical company he claimed to work for were completely fabricated. The man's online footprint was too clean, too perfect. That's when the dread truly set in. This wasn't just adultery. This was a calculated infiltration. Melissa hadn't simply fallen for some sleazy homewrecker. She had unknowingly become entangled with someone far more dangerous. Someone trained. Someone professional. My mind spiraled through every scenario I'd seen in my intelligence work. State-sponsored espionage, honey traps, exploitation of military personnel's family members, all tactics used to gain indirect access to classified information. And I was a goldmine for someone like him. My counterterrorism work gave me clearance to highly classified files, including sensitive data about emerging threats, troop movements, and technological capabilities. My family, my home, was the perfect weak point, and Melissa had handed it to him on a silver platter. What terrified me most wasn't even the betrayal. It was that my children, Caleb and Emma, were being used as unwitting pawns in this game. I had already seen text messages where Ryan had asked about my work schedule, my routines, even about how often I checked my secured laptop. Melissa, blinded by whatever manipulation or affection he used, was giving him everything he asked for. She didn't see it. She couldn't see it. I felt physically ill, but I couldn't confront her yet. Not until I had airtight evidence. This was bigger than personal revenge. If Ryan was who I suspected he was, this was a national security threat. I needed help. The following day, I reached out to my closest friend in the unit, Marcus Hale. Marcus was not just a fellow soldier. He was our cyber intelligence guru, a man who had broken into networks most hackers only dreamed of touching. "This is insane, Ethan," Marcus said after I laid out the situation. "Are you absolutely certain?" "I'm certain enough," I said through clenched teeth. "I'm not going to the FBI with a hunch. I need hard evidence. I need you to verify everything." "All right," Marcus sighed. "We'll go deep. Off the books." For the next 6 weeks, while fulfilling my official duties during the day, I spent my nights and every free moment coordinating with Marcus, gathering more information. What we found was worse than I had feared. Ryan Mitchell didn't exist, but a man named Pavel Resnick did, a foreign operative, an infiltration specialist known in several classified counterintelligence reports as part of a shadow organization that had been targeting U.S. military families for years. His mission? Seduce military spouses, dismantle families, and gain indirect access to sensitive data through the service members' loved ones. I wasn't his first target. I was just the latest. Melissa was being used as bait, and my children were the leverage. We traced offshore bank accounts linked to Melissa's secret account, payments lined up exactly with dates of my recent promotions and security clearance upgrades. They were paying her. Whether she knew who she was truly working with or simply convinced herself that it was harmless side income, I didn't yet know. But I knew one thing. The time for observation was over. I was flying home, not to my family, not to my wife, but to my battlefield. I landed in Virginia 3 weeks earlier than scheduled. My official leave request had been approved under the pretense of a family emergency, which was in TT entirely untrue. I didn't tell Melissa I was coming home. She wasn't supposed to know. Only a few trusted individuals were aware of my arrival, and my friend Marcus was already running silent surveillance in preparation for my return. I set up a temporary operations base at a nearby hotel, close enough to my house but distant enough to avoid drawing attention. My days were spent conducting discreet surveillance, setting up additional monitoring devices, and analyzing every move that occurred inside my home. The reality unfolded even darker than I feared. Pavel Resnick, operating under his fake identity Ryan Mitchell, had fully integrated himself into my household. He wasn't just Melissa's lover anymore. He was practically replacing me as a father figure to my children. Through hidden microphones, I listened as Caleb innocently discussed my work schedule with him. Emma mentioned the special locked cabinet in my home office where I stored my secured laptop. Resnick skillfully manipulated every conversation, carefully extracting information piece by piece. They didn't even realize they were being used. My children were pawns in his operation. Even worse, Melissa didn't seem hesitant. She was fully invested. I overheard intimate conversations between her and Resnick about their future, planning how to split my pension, gain full custody of the kids, and claim the house entirely. "He won't stand a chance in court," Melissa whispered. "The judge will see his military record and assume PTSD, emotional instability. It's the perfect narrative." Resnick smirked. "By the time we're done, you'll have everything. I'll handle the attorneys. Just follow the plan." My gut twisted hearing her betray not only me, but the very family I had built. I had seen many betrayals during my years in counterintelligence, but none this personal. It was time for phase 2. I waited for the perfect opportunity. A window where I knew the kids would be home from school, and Resnick would be there, but Melissa wouldn't return from her administrative job until later. When I finally knocked on my own front door, Caleb opened it, his face lighting up with surprise. "Dad, you're home early." I forced a smile, pulling him into a tight hug. "Surprise, buddy. Deployment got cut short." Emma came running down the stairs, nearly knocking me over with her embrace. "I missed you so much, Daddy." For a brief moment, my heart warmed, and the years of chaos faded as my children wrapped their small arms around me. But I couldn't lose focus, not now. "Where's your mom?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. "At work. Mr. Ryan is here, though. He's fixing the garbage disposal." Of course he was. I gently sent the kids outside to play, promising ice cream later. Then, I walked through my own house as if it were a foreign battlefield. Resnick was in the kitchen, head under the sink, pretending to fix plumbing. He stood up quickly when he saw me standing there. "Sergeant Walker," he said smoothly, wiping his hands. "Didn't expect you home so soon." I stepped forward, arms folded. "Drop the act, Pavel." For the first time since I discovered him, I saw it, the momentary flicker of fear flashing through his eyes. But like any good operative, he recovered quickly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You know exactly what I'm talking about." My voice was low but firm. "You've played this game with other military families. You seduce, you infiltrate, you extract classified data. You think I wouldn't find out?" "You're delusional, Walker," he said, the confidence returning to his voice. "Do you have any proof? Or is this just the paranoid fantasy of a soldier who's seen too much war?" I took a deep breath. "Oh, I've got plenty of proof," I replied calmly. "Financial records, surveillance footage, falsified documents, offshore accounts. Shall I keep going?" His smile faltered. "You're in over your head," he warned. "You should walk away before you ruin what's left of your career." I took another step forward, staring him dead in the eyes. "You made one fatal mistake, Resnick. You touched my children." The front door opened. Melissa had arrived. She froze, her eyes darting between me and Resnick. "Ethan, what's going on?" she stammered. "What's going on?" I repeated, my voice controlled but cold. "Ask your boyfriend here. Ryan was just helping with repairs. Why are you acting like this? His name isn't Ryan, it's Pavel Resnick. He's not who you think he is. And you?" I turned my gaze toward her, eyes narrowing. "You've been feeding him information that puts our family, and this entire country, at risk." Her face went pale. "You're insane," she whispered, trying to regain control. "This isn't what you think." "Oh, it's exactly what I think," I said. "You might still believe you're just having an affair, but you're part of something much bigger now. And trust me, Melissa, the authorities will be very interested in your financial transactions." Resnick stepped forward, his tone turning sharp. "This conversation is over. You're trespassing, Ethan. Leave." "No," I said calmly. "I'm not leaving. In fact, I've already contacted federal authorities. They're on their way as we speak." He tensed. Melissa's voice cracked. "The kids." "Ethan, please don't do this in front of the kids." I softened briefly. "I sent them outside for a reason." Then, flashing red and blue lights flooded the street. FBI agents and military intelligence officers stormed the property in coordinated precision. Within seconds, Resnick was pinned against the kitchen counter, handcuffed, his fake identity shattered. Melissa collapsed into a chair, burying her face in her hands, sobbing as the realization hit. As Resnick was dragged out in cuffs, he locked eyes with me one last time, sneering. "You don't know how deep this goes, Walker. This is bigger than you." "Maybe," I replied, "but you're finished." The operation had only just begun. The morning after Resnick's arrest, I sat in a sterile conference room inside a federal intelligence facility. Across the table sat 2 FBI agents, a military intelligence officer, and Colonel Avery, my superior officer who had overseen many of my classified assignments. "Sergeant Walker," the lead FBI agent, Agent Ramirez, began, "you have done something very few people in your position could have done. You maintained discipline, gathered extensive evidence, and uncovered an espionage operation operating directly through your family." "I didn't have a choice," I replied, my voice steady. "My children were being used. My wife was compromised. This was personal." Colonel Avery leaned forward. "We have solid evidence that Resnick, or should I say Pavel Resnick, is part of a highly organized foreign intelligence cell. His method is systematic: target military families, exploit the weak points, and extract classified information through indirect channels." Agent Ramirez continued. "What complicates matters is your wife's level of involvement. At minimum, she knowingly provided personal information to him. The payments deposited into her private account are undeniable." I clenched my fists under the table. As much as I hated what she'd done, she was still the mother of my children, and I knew the fallout would scar them for life. "So what happens to Melissa now?" I asked. "For now," Ramirez said, "she's considered a cooperating witness, but depending on the depth of her involvement, criminal charges may follow. We've opened a parallel investigation. In the meantime, we're recommending you immediately seek full custody of the children." That part, the part involving my children, was crystal clear in my mind. I would not let Melissa, or anyone else, exploit them again. The divorce papers arrived barely 2 weeks after Resnick's arrest. I was served divorce papers. Melissa wasn't even charged yet, but her lawyer, a ruthless shark named Veronica Cross, was clearly hoping to strike before federal charges locked everything down. The petition demanded full custody of Caleb and Emma, exclusive ownership of the house, 70% of my military pension, and even spousal support. I stared at the document, my hands trembling, not from fear, but rage. Marcus shook his head when I showed him the papers. "She's still playing the game. Even now." "It's not her alone," I said coldly. "Veronica Cross is known for targeting military personnel. She sees my deployments as ammunition, absentee father, unstable due to combat trauma, unfit for full custody." Marcus nodded. "And meanwhile, they pretend none of this espionage crap exists. They won't be able to pretend for long, I promised." Assembling my legal team. I hired Jason Callahan, a former JAG, Judge Advocate General Attorney turned civilian lawyer who specialized in military divorce cases. Jason read through the documents, whistling softly. "They're going for the jugular." "That's why I hired you," I said. "You've seen cases like this before?" "Not exactly like this, but I've dealt with manipulative spouses who weaponize military service against good fathers. This is next level because of the espionage." "I need full custody," I said firmly. "The kids are my first priority. I'm not letting them get exploited again." Jason nodded. "Understood. But be ready. They're going to drag your career, your PTSD screenings, even your deployments into court to paint you as unfit." "They can try," I said. "I've passed every psychological eval since day one. They'll have nothing." Jason grinned. "Good, then let's get to work." Melissa's depositions. During Melissa's deposition, her attitude shifted between victim and righteous anger. She claimed she was manipulated, that she didn't know who Resnick truly was, and that she believed it was harmless financial assistance while I was gone. "My client had no idea this man was a foreign operative," Veronica Cross argued. "She was isolated, raising children alone while her husband was deployed multiple times. She made some mistakes, but she is not a criminal. She accepted over $200,000 in investments during my deployments," I snapped back. "Right as my security clearance levels were increasing." "The funds were legal investment returns," Veronica countered. She had no knowledge of any illegal activities. The lies cut deep. Melissa even went as far as accusing me of being cold, distant, and obsessive due to my military work. She blamed my career for driving her into another man's arms. "She was lonely, Mr. Walker," Veronica said dramatically, "abandoned emotionally by her husband's constant absences." I wanted to shout, but Jason gripped my arm beneath the table, silently reminding me to stay composed. "She wasn't lonely," I whispered under my breath. "She was greedy." The courtroom battle. By the time we reached the first custody hearing, the tension was suffocating. Melissa entered the courtroom with her attorney and her parents sitting behind her, giving her moral support. She wore a conservative gray suit, her makeup minimal, trying to paint the image of a struggling mother caught in an unfortunate situation. I arrived in full military uniform, against Jason's advice. "This is risky," he had warned. "They'll accuse you of playing to the judge's emotions." "I'm not hiding who I am," I said. "I won't let them twist my service into a weakness." When the hearing started, Veronica immediately objected to my uniform, but the judge overruled. Jason presented the full financial trail we had uncovered, the offshore accounts, the mysterious deposits tied to my deployments, and the pattern of foreign intelligence targeting military families. Veronica tried to deflect, but Jason wasn't rattled. "We are not simply dealing with infidelity," Jason stated. "We're dealing with a systematic infiltration operation. The children were used as intelligence assets without their knowledge. And my client has proof." Melissa's composure cracked. I saw it in her eyes, the cracks forming, the foundation of lies starting to crumble. The turning point. Then came the moment that shifted everything. The FBI agent involved in Resnick's arrest testified under subpoena. "We have confirmed that Mr. Resnick targeted Sergeant Walker specifically for his military clearance. We have reason to believe that Mrs. Walker provided information, knowingly or unknowingly, that facilitated this espionage operation." Melissa's face drained of all color. The judge leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Mrs. Walker, you are fortunate criminal charges haven't yet been filed against you. But based on this testimony and the evidence presented, I cannot in good conscience grant you full custody." I exhaled for the first time in weeks. The judge slammed the gavel. "Temporary sole custody awarded to Sergeant Walker pending ongoing investigations. Mrs. Walker will receive supervised visitation only." Melissa burst into tears. Veronica tried to console her but knew the battle had turned. This wasn't over. Not yet. But for the first time, I finally had the advantage. And I wasn't stopping here. For the first time in months, I was breathing a little easier. The courtroom victory gave me primary custody of Caleb and Emma. Melissa was granted supervised visitation, but even that was being closely monitored by federal agents. But as any soldier knows, winning the first battle doesn't end the war. In fact, the most dangerous enemy often hides in the shadows after they've suffered their first major defeat. The FBI digs deeper. 2 weeks after the custody ruling, I was summoned back to the Federal Intelligence Facility. I could tell by Agent Ramirez's tone on the phone that this wasn't a routine update. When I entered the room, Colonel Avery, Agent Ramirez, and 2 unfamiliar cybersecurity specialists were already waiting. "What's going on?" I asked as I sat down. Agent Ramirez went straight to the point. "We've been reviewing additional digital forensics tied to Melissa's financial accounts and communication logs." He placed a thick file in front of me. "You need to see this." Inside were detailed logs of encrypted messages, not just between Melissa and Resnick, but with third parties. We believe Melissa wasn't merely a manipulated spouse. She was actively communicating with individuals linked to foreign intelligence brokers. Ramirez continued. This wasn't just passive pillow talk. She was feeding them detailed information. The room felt like it shrank around me. "What kind of information?" My voice was low, controlled. "Deployment schedules, your classified assignments, even names of contractors tied to some of your more sensitive operations," one of the cybersecurity specialists added. She wasn't simply passing what Resnick asked for, she was proactively volunteering data. My jaw tightened. "How long?" "At least 18 months, Ramirez answered. And based on the payment patterns, her cooperation escalated after each successful intel drop. And based on the payment patterns, her cooperation escalated after each successful intel drop. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. I had told myself for months that perhaps Melissa had simply been manipulated, that she was naive, drawn in emotionally by a trained predator like Resnick. But this wasn't naivety. This was betrayal with full agency. She had sold out not only our marriage and our family, but her country as well. The confrontation. That evening I requested a private supervised visit with Melissa. The FBI approved it, placing 2 agents nearby but allowing me to speak to her directly in an interrogation room inside the federal facility. When she entered, she looked smaller, paler, as though the weight of everything had finally crashed down on her. She tried to smile. "Ethan, thank you for seeing me." I didn't return the smile. "Don't waste my time, Melissa." She swallowed hard, eyes darting nervously toward the glass window where agents observed. "You think I planned all of this, but I didn't." "Yes, you did." I leaned forward, voice barely above a whisper, but sharper than any scream. "You weren't just manipulated, you participated, you volunteered information." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't know how deep it went, at first. But you knew eventually." She sobbed, nodding silently. "Do you even realize what you've done? How many people you may have put in danger? You put our children in danger." "I never thought they would hurt the kids." "No, you just sold information that could compromise military operations and endanger countless lives," I shot back. Melissa buried her face in her hands. "They made it sound harmless. Just schedules, just deployment timelines, just contacts. I thought I was helping you somehow." "Helping me?" I laughed bitterly. "You sold out your own husband." "I didn't mean for it to go that far." "But it did, Melissa. And now you are facing charges that could put you in federal prison for the rest of your life." Her shoulders shook as the gravity of her situation truly sank in. The door opened, signaling the end of the allotted visit. As agents stepped inside, I stood up slowly. "I came here for one reason," I said calmly. "To tell you face to face. Don't ever think this is something you did to just me. You betrayed Caleb. You betrayed Emma. You betrayed your country, and that's something I will never forgive." I walked out without looking back. The federal indictment. Within the next month, the Justice Department formally indicted Melissa on multiple counts: conspiracy to commit espionage, wire fraud, failing to register as a foreign agent, endangering national security. The media caught wind of the scandal quickly. News vans camped outside my home. Headlines screamed about the military wife turned spy. My children's faces were blurred in every tabloid, but the shame was unavoidable. The military issued additional protective measures. I was temporarily relocated to an undisclosed base while the investigation expanded into Resnick's broader network. Resnick himself was singing like a canary, exchanging intelligence for reduced sentencing, revealing multiple international players who had targeted military families like mine for years. The emotional aftermath. At home, the hardest part was explaining everything to Caleb and Emma. I sat them both down after dinner, breathing deeply as I prepared myself. There's something we need to talk about. Something important. Caleb, now 12, looked serious. Emma, only 9, clung to my arm nervously. Is this about Mom? Emma whispered. Yes, sweetheart. Your mother made choices. Very bad choices that broke the law and put people in danger. But why would she do that? Caleb asked, his voice breaking slightly. I fought to steady my emotions. Sometimes people make decisions they think are harmless at first, but then they keep going, lying to themselves until they can't turn back. Is she going to jail forever? Emma's eyes filled with tears. She may spend a long time in prison, yes, but I promise you, none of this is your fault. They both burst into tears and I held them tightly, my heart breaking again. I had faced terrorists, war zones, and enemy combatants for most of my career. But nothing had prepared me for the heartbreak of watching my children process the betrayal of their own mother. The final straw. 2 weeks later, Melissa's legal team made one last desperate play. They offered a plea deal, reduced charges in exchange for full cooperation, including revealing the rest of Resnick's network and testifying against him and foreign handlers. In exchange, they requested a lighter sentence and permission for supervised visitation with the children. My answer was swift and absolute. No, not this time. Melissa would pay for every choice she made. I owed that to my children. I owed that to every soldier Resnick's network had targeted. And most importantly, I owed it to myself. The weeks following Melissa's indictment were some of the most exhausting days of my life. Public attention exploded like wildfire. News channels dissected every detail of the case. Talk shows speculated on how deep the foreign infiltration reached, and military forums debated whether my story represented a growing threat to all military families. I kept my head low. My priority was Caleb and Emma. The military arranged private security for us, and we were temporarily housed in a secured military compound far from public attention. At least here, the kids could have some stability, while the legal chaos swirled around us. The media storm. It didn't take long before the story spun out of control. Headlines screamed across every screen. Army sergeant's wife exposed as foreign spy. How a mother sold her family for secrets. The betrayal inside America's military households. Neighbors who once waved politely at us now avoided eye contact. Caleb noticed the whispers at school. Emma clung to my side, afraid to leave my sight. One evening, as I tucked her into bed, she whispered, "Daddy, do people hate us?" I knelt down, cupping her small face in my hands. "No, sweetheart. They're angry at what your mom did, not you. Never you." Tears welled in her eyes. "But the other kids say mean things." I fought back my own anger. The world outside didn't understand that 2 innocent children were victims too. "We'll get through this together," I promised. Resnick starts talking. While the media attacked our private lives, behind closed doors, Resnick started giving the FBI more than anyone anticipated. Through multiple high-level debriefings, Resnick revealed a web of espionage operations that had been active for nearly a decade, targeting not only military families, but politicians, private contractors, and even defense industry scientists. His confession read like something out of a Cold War thriller, except it was painfully real. "Your wife was just one of many," Resnick told investigators. "We identified vulnerabilities, loneliness, financial stress, marital strain. The military's long deployments made them easy prey. More names surfaced. Other families, other marriages destroyed. The extent of the operation horrified even the most seasoned intelligence officials. This wasn't just about my family anymore. It was national. The unexpected offer. One morning, General Avery summoned me to headquarters. "Sit down, Sergeant." He slid a folder across the desk. Inside were clearance documents and an offer that stunned me. "We want you to join a newly formed task force, the Military Family Security Unit. Your experience makes you uniquely qualified." The MFSU's mission would be simple in theory, but complicated in practice. Prevent this from ever happening again. "You want me to hunt these people?" I asked. "Correct," Avery replied. "You've seen firsthand how they operate. You can help us build a defense we've clearly lacked. The position would be permanent. No more overseas deployments. I could stay with my kids while helping protect others from going through the hell we just survived." I glanced at the offer for a long moment. "For Caleb and Emma, I'll do it." The custody hearing. Final round. Melissa's criminal trial was still months away, but the family court was ready to finalize permanent custody. She sat across from me, her appearance now completely different from the woman I once married. She was pale, tired, and dressed in a simple prison-issued outfit, her hands cuffed to the table. The judge's voice was firm. "Mrs. Walker, given the overwhelming evidence of your involvement in espionage, the court has no choice but to permanently revoke your custodial rights." Melissa began to cry softly. "Sergeant Walker, full legal and physical custody is granted to you. Supervised visitation will be suspended indefinitely." The gavel struck the desk. It was over. For a moment, Melissa looked up at me, desperate. "Ethan, please, don't let the kids forget me." I stared back, steady. "They will never forget that you were their mother," I said quietly. "But they will also know what you did." As the guards escorted her out, I felt a strange mixture of grief and relief. The mother of my children had become a ghost behind glass and iron bars, but my children were finally safe. A new beginning. In the following weeks, we moved into a new home, one far away from the media circus, but still close enough to my new assignment. Caleb began therapy sessions designed to help children of betrayed families. Emma grew attached to Mrs. Harding, the wife of my best friend Marcus, who had become like a second mother to her. And slowly, painfully, the three of us began to heal. Each night, I would sit on our new porch as the kids played outside. The sun setting behind them felt like a metaphor I couldn't ignore. We were still standing. We had survived. Months had passed since the custody ruling, and while Melissa's criminal trial moved slowly through the courts, my life was starting to regain some structure. Caleb and Emma were adjusting to their new normal, slowly rebuilding their confidence. The therapy sessions were helping, but the scars would never fully vanish. Meanwhile, my work with the Military Family Security Unit, MFSU, had grown far more intense than I ever anticipated. The more cases we uncovered, the more terrifying the reality became. My family was just the tip of the iceberg. The pattern emerges. Resnick's full confession revealed something far darker than isolated espionage. His organization wasn't some rogue foreign agency operating alone. It was part of a global coalition, a coordinated network of adversaries sharing resources, intelligence, and agents across borders. What made them deadly was their subtlety. They didn't use traditional spies with fake mustaches and secret briefcases anymore. They used family dynamics, deployments, marital stress, financial insecurities, children. They targeted families because families had the weakest firewalls, and America's enemies had learned that if you couldn't hack the Pentagon, you could quietly hack the people who sleep next to Pentagon employees. The target list. In a classified briefing, Colonel Avery laid out a chart that sent chills down my spine. We have 217 suspected infiltration cases across all branches of the military, 82 confirmed compromises, and at least 11 high-value operatives embedded as spouses or close partners. I clenched my jaw. The magnitude of it was staggering. This isn't just my story, I muttered under my breath. Avery nodded grimly. No, this is systemic. Your case simply cracked the door open. The intelligence leak. Then came the incident that elevated everything to DEFCON level emergency. One of our flagged suspect families, a Navy submarine commander's wife, was caught leaking blueprints related to next-generation stealth submarines. She wasn't even aware the information she was passing was valuable. Her lover had framed the questions as harmless curiosity about her husband's work. But once the leak was confirmed, the consequences were catastrophic. Congress got involved. Senate hearings were launched. Public outrage exploded. How many Melissa Walkers are out there? How vulnerable is our national defense? The country wanted blood, called to testify. I never intended to be the public face of this scandal, but when the Senate Intelligence Committee summoned me to testify, I had no choice but to step forward. The hearing room was packed with reporters, military officials, and politicians posturing for cameras. As I sat before the microphone, cameras flashing, I briefly locked eyes with Caleb and Emma sitting quietly in the audience with Marcus and Mrs. Harding. I drew strength from them. Senator Price opened the questioning. Sergeant Walker, can you explain for the record how your family became entangled in an international espionage ring? I took a deep breath. My family was exploited because I was a target of opportunity. My wife was vulnerable during deployments. Foreign operatives manipulated her emotions and finances to slowly draw her in. Did you see it happening? I saw changes, distance, secrecy. But I trusted her. I never imagined it would escalate to treason. The room fell silent. Senator Price leaned forward. Do you believe there are more families in danger? I answered without hesitation. Yes, many more. And if we don't act decisively, more children will grow up like my son and daughter, betrayed by the person they trusted most. Danke Christ. After my testimony aired on national television, the media frenzy reignited. Some hailed me as a hero. Others questioned why I hadn't seen the warning signs earlier. The worst were the internet trolls. If he was such a great intelligence officer, how did he miss what was happening under his own roof? What none of them understood was that love blinds you to betrayal. You never suspect the person you sleep beside could be your enemy. But I stayed focused, because while the media raged, something far darker was happening behind closed doors. The assassination attempt, one late evening, as I drove back from a meeting with MFSU leadership, an unmarked black SUV accelerated toward my vehicle. In seconds, I recognized the maneuver, an intentional high-speed ramming technique. I swerved sharply. The SUV clipped my rear fender, sending my vehicle spinning off the road into a ditch. My airbags exploded as glass shattered around me. Groggy but conscious, I reached instinctively for the sidearm I carried everywhere. The SUV doors opened. Two masked men stepped out. Not random criminals, professionals. I fired 2 warning shots into the air. One of them dove for cover. The other opened fire directly at my windshield. The firefight was short, violent, and precise. When backup finally arrived, both attackers had fled into the woods. The message was clear. Someone inside the foreign network still considered me a threat. Protecting what matters that night, I didn't sleep. I sat at Caleb's bedside, watching him breathe softly in his sleep. I stroked Emma's hair as she curled up against her stuffed rabbit. In those moments, I understood fully. My war wasn't over. I had survived terrorists, war zones, and betrayals. But now, I faced an enemy without borders, one who didn't just want secrets. They wanted silence. And as long as I was breathing, they wouldn't get it. The assassination attempt changed everything. What was once a war fought in courtrooms and intelligence briefings had now bled into my real life. They had crossed a line. They weren't just trying to silence me anymore. They were hunting my family. That night, I called Colonel Avery directly. "It's time to end this," I said. "We need to draw them out." The bait. Over the next 72 hours, my team at the Military Family Security Unit worked non-stop. The plan was dangerous, reckless even, but it was the only way. We leaked false intelligence through channels we knew the foreign operatives still monitored. suggesting that I had uncovered the identities of several high-ranking infiltrators, but hadn't yet turned the evidence over to federal prosecutors. The bait was simple: make them believe I was holding critical files, and that I was vulnerable. I relocated my children to a secure facility under round-the-clock protection. They didn't even know where I was. For the first time since this nightmare began, I truly understood the cost of war on the home front. The shadow network moves. Within 48 hours, surveillance confirmed exactly what we hoped. The network took the bait. Intercepted communications revealed an emergency meeting of their top operatives in a remote cabin 80 miles outside D.C. This wasn't just a cleanup crew. This was leadership. The very people who had orchestrated the infiltration of over 200 American military families. Their arrogance made them sloppy. They believed they still controlled the board. The operation. The raid was codenamed Operation Fortress, a nod to what I had been building around my children for the past 2 years. We deployed under complete blackout protocols. No leaks, no media, no outside jurisdictions. At 0200 hours, 4 tactical teams moved in. I was inside the lead convoy. For once, I wouldn't be watching from the sidelines. This was personal. The raid. We approached silently under cover of darkness. Thermal imaging identified 6 heat signatures inside the cabin. As we breached, chaos erupted. Flashbangs detonated. Orders shouted. Targets subdued. One man reached for a sidearm. I tackled him before he could even aim. My knee crushed his wrist into the hardwood floor. I recognized him immediately. Viktor Antonov, Resnick's original handler, the man who recruited Melissa, the spider at the center of this web. He glared at me through bloodied lips. "You have no idea what you've just done, Sergeant Walker." "I know exactly what I've done," I replied coldly. "I ended this." The network collapses by dawn. We had secured 7 arrests. More importantly, the files recovered from their computers provided the entire organizational structure: names, bank accounts, covert safe houses, recruitment playbooks. The investigation expanded globally. More than 30 additional arrests followed in Europe, South America, and Asia. The global coalition that had preyed on American military families for over a decade was dismantled in one night. Melissa's final attempt. In the aftermath, Melissa reached out from prison through her attorney. She requested a meeting. "I have information that may protect your children's future," her lawyer claimed. Against my better judgment, and after consulting with federal agents, I agreed to one last meeting under heavy security. When she entered the room, she looked broken, physically and emotionally deteriorated from years of incarceration. She spoke first. "Ethan, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but there are people still loyal to Viktor who may try to retaliate." "The network's been destroyed," I replied. "Not completely," she whispered. "Some cells were designed to operate autonomously if the leadership fell. Sleeper agents." She slid a folder across the table, detailed profiles of individuals who had stayed hidden during the collapse. "Why are you giving me this now?" I asked. Tears streamed down her face. "Because, for all my failures as a wife, I don't want to fail as their mother. Protect Caleb and Emma." I nodded slowly, taking the file. "You made choices that destroyed our family, Melissa," I said. "But this may save someone else's." The guards escorted her out. I never saw her again. The price of victory. In the months that followed, I reviewed and expanded every security protocol surrounding my children. Caleb excelled in school, joining the ROTC program, determined to serve his country differently than I had. Emma began therapy sessions focused on building emotional resilience, determined not to let her mother's betrayal define her future. At night, when the house grew quiet, I would sit on the back deck, stare into the stars, and reflect. The fortress I built wasn't made of concrete or steel. It was built of truth, transparency, pain, and unbreakable love for my children. I had sacrificed everything to protect what mattered, and I would do it again, every single time. 5 years later, the storm had passed. Not quickly, not painlessly, but it had passed. The global network that nearly destroyed my family, and hundreds of others, was gone. Its operatives captured, its finances frozen, its leadership either imprisoned or dead. What remained was the aftermath. The new normal. Caleb was now 18, a young man with quiet strength. His once boyish face had matured into sharp lines of discipline. He had recently accepted his appointment to the United States Air Force Academy. Emma was 15, bright, resilient, and fiercely independent. She had discovered her passion in cybersecurity, perhaps unsurprisingly, and volunteered regularly with the Military Family Outreach Program, helping other kids like herself. And me? I remained in my post with the Military Family Security Unit, now a much larger, globally coordinated agency, thanks to everything we uncovered. My life was calmer now, but the scars remained under the surface, invisible, but permanent. A visit from the past. One afternoon, as autumn leaves fell softly across my backyard, a knock came at the front door. It was Agent Walsh. Her face was serious. "Ethan, we need to talk." Inside, she laid a sealed folder on the kitchen table. "It's about Melissa." My pulse quickened slightly, though I tried not to show it. "She's still serving her sentence," I said. "Not anymore." I froze. "What?" "2 weeks ago, she died in federal custody. Acute respiratory failure." I stared at the folder. The weight of everything we'd been through came rushing back. Unfinished business. Inside the file were Melissa's final interview transcripts. Apparently, before her death, she had provided one last intelligence dump. Names of several high-ranking political figures who had quietly supported the infiltration program for years, betraying their country from within. It was damning, explosive. "We're taking this directly to federal prosecutors," Walsh said. "This may trigger the largest treason trial in modern history." "And the kids?" I asked softly. "They'll be protected. Their names will never surface." Relief washed through me. For years, my greatest fear wasn't physical danger. It was the psychological cost on Caleb and Emma. They had already lost enough. The final letter. There was one more item in the folder. A handwritten letter Melissa had requested be given to me after her death. I opened it slowly. "Ethan, there's nothing I can say that will erase what I've done. I chose selfishness over family, over country. You were always the better person. Stronger, braver, more loyal than I ever deserved. But I never stopped loving Caleb and Emma. And I never stopped loving you, even as I destroyed us. In my final days, I did what little I could to try to make it right. I don't ask for your forgiveness. I only ask that you tell the children I loved them, and that I am sorry. Melissa." I sat quietly, letting the weight of her words settle. She was right. There was no forgiveness left to give, but some part of me believed she meant it. Telling the children that evening, after dinner, I sat Caleb and Emma down. "I need to share something about your mother." They listened, older now, wiser than their years. I handed them the letter. They read it silently. Emma wiped a tear away. Caleb kept his face stoic. "She was sick," Emma finally whispered. "She was weak," Caleb said, his voice firm, "but she was still our mom." "Yes," I agreed, "and she did love you, in her broken way." I pulled both of them into an embrace. What matters most is who you've become. Closure. In the months that followed, life finally settled into something that resembled peace. Caleb departed for the Air Force Academy. Emma continued excelling in school. We even adopted a dog, a stubborn but loyal German shepherd the kids named Guardian. Fitting, I thought. One night, sitting on the back porch, Agent Walsh joined me for coffee. "How does it feel?" she asked. "Like the war is finally over," I said. "But the lessons will never leave." She nodded, understanding. "Your story will help protect countless other families, Ethan." That's all I ever wanted. We sat in comfortable silence, the stars blinking overhead. The fortress I had built was no longer about defense. It was about legacy. The true cost. In the end, I had lost my wife. I had lost my marriage. I had lost my blind faith. But I had saved my children. I had saved my soul. Some battles aren't won. They are simply survived.